Officers Derek Stafford and Norris Greenhouse are currently being held on $1 million bond each for the murder of Jeremy Mardis and the attempted murder of Chris Few. The attorney for the victim's family stated that the body camera video of the officers clearly shows Chris Few had his hands up at the time of the incident and did not pose a threat. The officers involved initially fabricated a story, if you recall, about Chris Few having an outstanding warrant and being armed, and now this fabrication has been exposed as a lie. Until now, there was no logical reason for the stop, leaving everyone wondering why these officers went after Mr. Few at all. However, all that changed when Few's fiancée came forward about her relationship with Norris Greenhouse, who again is one of the officers involved. Greenhouse, a former high school classmate of Miss Dixon, linked up with her on Facebook and went by the house Few and Dixon were sharing at the time to refresh himself. Obviously, one thing led to another, and eventually this love triangle ended up with the attempted execution and cover-up of an unarmed citizen. And in the crossfire, one person did lose their life. However, 6-year-old Jeremy Mardis, the youngest fatality by cop this year. And as it turns out, this cold-blooded murder is not the only assault these two cops have committed. Stafford and Greenhouse have quite the history when it comes to abusing citizens. KATC reports the pair have 5 other unrelated civil suits pending, ranging from destruction of property to assault. Stafford was also indicted by a grand jury in 2011 on 2 counts of aggravated rape. The case was, quote, resolved, end quote, but KATC investigates is still waiting to receive documents on that outcome. This situation is a clear example of what can happen when a cop's history of bad behavior goes unpunished. A little-known agency called Immigration and Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE, is under congressional investigation after an illegal op in Mexico failed miserably and resulted in the deaths of at least 3 people, while losing over $100 grand to the Mexican drug cartels. In what will soon be known as Fast and Furious Part 2, agents from the ICE San Diego branch launched an illegal op in a foreign country with tragic results. Not only did they break the law by sanctioning and directing an operation outside their jurisdiction, the agents involved here obstructed justice by covering up their tracks, and one of these agents ended up getting promoted to the number 2 spot at the Department of Homeland Security because of the cover-up. This is big news, ladies and gentlemen. Derek Benner, pictured here, is now the Deputy Director of DHS and is in charge of over 10,000 employees worldwide. Not only does ICE not secure our borders, not only do they send our tax money to drug dealers abroad and get informants killed, they obstruct justice and then promote themselves to even higher paying jobs. A San Jose police sergeant was put on administrative leave and is facing misdemeanor charges after he allegedly exposed himself to a woman while masturbating in a car on a busy road in Redwood City this month. Sergeant James Rainey Mason, a 13-year veteran of the department, is facing 1 charge each of indecent exposure and committing a lewd act in public for the September 4th, 2015 incident, said San Mateo County District Attorney Steve Wagstaff. The officer was immediately released on bail and will likely just receive a slap on the wrist. Now, how is this a misdemeanor? This guy should have been picked up like a hardcore sex offender. And this just comes a few months after another San Jose police officer was convicted of raping another woman. It's just another day in the office for these guys. Today, it came out that air marshals were filming themselves having sex with prostitutes on government phones. They were sharing that with people.
CopLink gives us something we never had before. We never had the ability to search over a broad area, over broad jurisdictions, and get detailed data. Now we can do that and put it together and make a case right from the screen, as opposed to making telephone calls and hit or miss whether I get the right
I
data.
probably use CopLink, I would say, with just about every case that I have in some fashion or another. Sometimes it's just a simple little search.
What is CopLink? CopLink is software in the cloud. It allows any person with access to a local police network the ability to become your worst nightmare. Forget the days of old-fashioned detective work. With CopLink, any full-time, part-time, substitute, or volunteer police officer can just log in and see where you are, where you've been, and where you will most likely be. Sometimes it pays to be ugly, and sometimes it pays not to be a troublemaker, because now if you flip off the wrong cop or just happen to be this cop's type of person, he can track you down from the comfort of his cruiser, from the comfort of his cell phone. No warrants required, no approval necessary. With CopLink, you just need to pop in the license plate or a description or a phone number or a Facebook name, and voila! He can prowl into your life and see every little detail.
And you are looking live in Millis. An intense manhunt is heavily underway right now. Armed police officers searching for a suspect. They say opened fire on an officer in his patrol car. Tonight we don't know if that officer was hurt, but we do know the cruiser was hit. It crashed and it caught on fire.
Investigators do have a suspect in mind. Let's get to News Center 5's Jack Harper live in Millis with more on the manhunt. Jack?
Right here at the corner of Forest Street, and that's where it happened, further down Forest Street. I want to bring in Mike O'Neill. Mike was over in his yard, actually, when they went by him, and it was clear to you, Mike, that that cruiser was after this pickup truck. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. The truck was really flying. The cruiser was right behind him. He had the lights flashing, the siren blaring. The truck was like in the middle of the road trying to, prevent the cruiser from overtaking him.
When you saw them, they blew through this intersection.
Yeah, this is a real thing.
Fabricated. Thank you, Mike, very much. And then it ended up down the street a little bit. That's where someone involved with that truck, apparently in the truck, got out and fired at this.
Yeah, this is a real thing.
Jason Monahan, we are breaking into regular programming to bring you this press conference from Millis regarding the potential shooting at a police cruiser with an officer inside yesterday. Let's hear what he has to say.
Yesterday afternoon, members of the Millis Police Department, along with police from surrounding towns and the state police, responded to Forest Road for the reports of shots being fired into a Millis police cruiser. Over the next several hours, numerous officers, troopers, K-9 units, and a state police helicopter conducted an intensive search for the reported suspect. Neither the suspect nor the vehicle he was said to be driving was found. An extensive search for ballistic evidence at and around the scene was also conducted. As a result of that search, the only ballistic evidence recovered was that belonging to the part-time officer. Additionally, several interviews were conducted with this officer. Upon conclusion of these interviews, and as a result of all other evidence, we have determined that the officer's story was fabricated. Specifically, that he fired shots at his own cruiser as part of a plan to concoct a story that he was fired upon. The evidence indicates that the shots were not fired by a suspect, and there is no gunman at large in or around the town. The Millis Police will work with the Norfolk District Attorney's Office and the State Police Unit assigned to that office to determine what criminal charges the officer will face. Shots were not fired by a suspect, and there is no gunman at large in or around the town. It's fabricated. We have determined that the officer's story was fabricated.
Yeah, this is a real thing.
It's fabricated.
Thank you, Mike, very much.
Okay, so wait a minute. You got the police department and everything coming out and stating that no truck existed, that there was never a truck and an individual that shot at the cop. Well, so now I have to ask you this now, everybody. So where did the witnesses come from that didn't really see anything because the maroon truck didn't really exist?
So here's the story. They come on TV, breaking news. There's a situation out there. Buckle up, we're on our way. We're coming house to house, and it's martial law out there. We're coming to save you. Initially, when the story broke, you had cops everywhere in full tactical gear with K-9s. You'd think we were being invaded. They were locking down roads, locking down schools, going house to house. Literally, martial law. And now they say, uh-oh, big mistake. What's going on here? There's a new czar in town, ladies and gentlemen. A domestic terrorist czar. Oh yeah. Here's what we know so far.
These people who hold themselves out to be patriots are not. They're nothing more than domestic terrorists.
She compared Republicans to terrorists at a rally yesterday for their views on abortion and singled out several Republican presidential candidates.
As you can see, it doesn't take much to be labeled a domestic terrorist these days. If you believe in the Bible, if you believe in the Constitution, if you're a returning veteran who proudly served his or her country, you are now a domestic terrorist. And of course, there's a czar for that. If you can't win an election, my friends, the next best thing you can do is open the borders and arrest people from the opposition. We attempted to find concerned citizens who would comment on this subject for this broadcast, however, none felt compelled to answer our questions. What should be abundantly clear for you by now, ladies and gentlemen, is that little by little we are descending into tyranny. As days go by, our country is looking more and more like Nazi Germany. It's Nazi in America, and we already have a Gestapo. We already have a Ministry of Truth. All we need now are prison camps and mass executions, and we'll be good to go. Common sense tells you that we've become hostages in our very own country. If you resist their tyranny, they will call you a domestic terrorist. Let that sink in. If you do nothing, they will arrest you for resisting arrest. And if you resist their violence, they will execute you on the spot. Thousands of Americans are executed each and every year by the Gestapo. They execute Americans here and then they fund terrorism abroad so that terrorists can execute Americans there as well. They run psychological operations known as false flags, and they will indoctrinate you so that you will believe that good is evil and that evil is good.